Please like the video and share it so that it reaches many more people and you get sawaba, or rewards from Allah. This could be a sawabe jariyah or continuous reward for you long after you are gone.
Volume 3, Book 34, number 306. Narrated by Abu Hazim. I heard Sahl bin Sa'd saying, a woman brought a burda, i.e. a square piece of cloth having edging. I asked, do you know what a burda is? They replied in the affirmative and said, it is a cloth sheet with woven margins. Sahl went on, she addressed the Prophet and said, I have woven it with my hands for you to wear. The Prophet took it as he was in need of it, and came to us wearing it as a waist sheet. One of us said, O Allah's Apostle, give it to me to wear. The Prophet agreed to give it to him. The Prophet sat with the people for a while and then returned home, wrapped that waist sheet and sent it to him. The people said to that man, you haven't done well by asking him for it when you know that he never turns down anybody's request. The man replied, by Allah, I have not asked him for it except to use it as my shroud when I die. Sahl added, later it, i.e. that sheet, was his shroud. Volume 3, Book 34, number 307. Narrated by Abu Hazim. Some men came to Sahl bin Sa'd to ask him about the pulpit. He replied, Allah's Apostle sent for a woman, Sahl named her, this message, order your slave carpenter to make pieces of wood, i.e. a pulpit, for me so that I may sit on it while addressing the people. So, she ordered him to make it from the tamarisk of the forest. He brought it to her and she sent it to Allah's Apostle. Allah's Apostle ordered it to be placed in the mosque. So, it was put and he sat on it. Volume 3, Book 34, number 308. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. An Ansari woman said to Allah's Apostle, O Allah's Apostle, shall I make something for you to sit on, as I have a slave who is a carpenter? He replied, if you wish. So, she got a pulpit made for him. When it was Friday the Prophet sat on that pulpit. The date palm stem near which the Prophet used to deliver his sermons cried so much so that it was about to burst. The Prophet came down from the pulpit to the stem and embraced it, and it started groaning like a child being persuaded to stop crying, and then it stopped crying. The Prophet said, it has cried because of missing what it used to hear of the religion's knowledge. Volume 3, Book 34, number 309. Narrated by Aisha. Allah's Apostle bought food grains from a Jew on credit and mortgaged his armor to him. Volume 3, Book 34, number 310. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. I was with the Prophet in a ghazwa, military expedition, and my camel was slow and exhausted. The Prophet came up to me and said, O Jabir. I replied, yes. He said, what is the matter with you? I replied, my camel is slow and tired, so I am left behind. So, he got down and poked the camel with his stick and then ordered me to ride. I rode the camel and it became so fast that I had to hold it from going ahead of Allah's Apostle. He then asked me, have you got married? I replied in the affirmative. He asked, a virgin or a matron? I replied, I married a matron. The Prophet said, why have you not married a virgin, so that you may play with her and she may play with you? Jabir replied, I have sisters, young in age, so I like to marry a matron who could collect them all and comb their hair and look after them. The Prophet said, you will reach, so when you have arrived at home, I advise you to associate with your wife, that you may have an intelligent son. Then he asked me, would you like to sell your camel? I replied in the affirmative, and the Prophet purchased it for 1 uqiyah of gold. Allah's Apostle reached before me and I reached in the morning, and when I went to the mosque, I found him at the door of the mosque. He asked me, have you arrived just now? I replied in the affirmative. He said, leave your camel and come into the mosque, and pray 2 rakat. I entered and offered the prayer. He told Bilal to weigh and give me 1 uqiyah of gold. So Bilal weighed for me fairly and I went away. The Prophet sent for me and I thought that he would return to me my camel, which I hated more than anything else. But the Prophet said to me, "Take your camel as well as its price." Volume 3, Book 34, number 311. Narrated by Ibn Abbas. Ukaz, Majana and Dul Majaz were markets in the pre-Islamic period. When the people embraced Islam, they considered it a sin to trade there. So, the following holy verse came: "There is no harm for you if you seek of the bounty of your Lord, Allah, in the Hajj season." 2.198, Ibn Abbas recited it like this. Volume 3, Book 34, number 312. Narrated by Amra. Here, i.e. in Mecca, there was a man called Nawar, and he had camels suffering from the disease of excessive and unquenchable thirst. Ibn Umar went to the partner of Nawar and bought those camels. The man returned to Nawar and told him that he had sold those camels. Nawar asked him, "To whom have you sold them?" He replied, "To such and such sheikh." Nawar said, "Woe to you! By Allah, that sheikh was Ibn Umar." Nawar then went to Ibn Umar and said to him, "My partner sold you camels suffering from the disease of excessive thirst, and he had not known you." Ibn Umar told him to take them back. When Nawar went to take them, Ibn Umar said to him, "Leave them there, as I am happy with the decision of Allah's Apostle that there is no oppression." Volume 3, Book 34, number 313. Narrated by Abu Qatada. We set out with Allah's Apostle in the year of Hunayn. The Prophet gave me an armor. I sold that armor and bought a garden in the region of the tribe of Bani Salama, and that was the first property I got after embracing Islam. Volume 3, Book 34, number 314. Narrated by Abu Musa. Allah's Apostle said, "The example of a good companion, who sits with you, in comparison with a bad one, is like that of the musk seller and the blacksmith's bellows, or furnace. From the first you would either buy musk or enjoy its good smell, while the bellows would either burn your clothes or your house, or you get a bad nasty smell thereof." Volume 3, Book 34, number 315. Narrated by Anas bin Malik. Abu Taiba cupped Allah's Apostle, so he ordered that he be paid 1 sa of dates and ordered his masters to reduce his tax, as he was a slave and had to pay a tax to them. Volume 3, Book 34, number 316. Narrated by Ibn Abbas. Once the Prophet got his blood out, medically, and paid that person who had done it. If it had been illegal, the Prophet would not have paid him. Volume 3, Book 34, number 317. Narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. Once the Prophet sent to Umar a silken 2-piece garment, and when he saw Umar wearing it, he said to him, "I have not sent it to you to wear. It is worn by him who has no share in the hereafter, and I have sent it to you so that you could benefit by it, i.e., sell it."